We got a new cool item, smarter hoppers, stronger dogs, and changes to the vault block. Hello there, Ray here, and today we're going to look at the brand new snapshot that came out for the upcoming 1.21 update, as well as the 1.20.5 Java edition. So leave a like and let's learn about all the new stuff. A new item has been added into the game, and that is related to the breeze. If you manage to kill the breeze, it can drop a new item which is called the wind charge. Each breeze can drop between 4 to 6 of these when they are killed. And using looting won't change this number. Now with this item, if you would hold it and then right click, it's going to throw out the actual same wind charge that the breeze shoots out. So if we turn on hitboxes, you can see it flying through the air and doing the little explosion like particles, which means it can actually make you jump quite high. It's gonna be so much fun to kind of use this as like a double jump in Minecraft. Now there is a slight difference between the wind charge from the breeze and the one that comes from the player. That's because the player's one actually does 10% more knockback than the breeze's, but the area in which it actually impacts is smaller. Notice how big the breeze's particles when it hits the ground compared to this one. It's much smaller, so it's not going to affect as big of an area. This finally gives me reason to use my trial spawner farm to farm up the breezes for their wind charges. I made this crazy farm way back when they actually came out with the trial spawners, and it automatically will kill any mobs that comes out of them and would pick up the loot that comes out of the trial spawner itself, with the most unique loot being the trial key. Now that we have a mob that comes from these things that's actually worth farming up for their loot, I just have to tweak this so that we can also get the breezes loot as well. But in that video, I actually also have a version that uses wither roses, so they just end up spawning on top of the wither roses. But because the wither roses are not considered a player kill, it won't actually give the new wind charges, as these are only given when they're killed by the player and not by natural means. So make sure to join my live streams as I design a new type of farm specifically to harness all these wind charges, as it's a really cool product which is extremely unique. Now, like the ender pearls, when you throw a charge, there is a cooldown, so you can't just spam a whole bunch of them super fast. But the cooldown's only half a second compared to the slower ender pearls. They also work with dispensers, as you can put them in similar to like fire charges, and then when they get power, they'll get shot off and then just start flying. The one that's going upwards, well, he's going to be going for a while. This will make it great so you can actually get this kind of explosion knockback without actually needing the breeze there or having the player shoot them out. But if you've been watching my live streams, you'll see that I already made a breeze and golem setup, which is great for clearing items away inside of my stacked raid farm without even needing pistons. So it would be better to get the actual breeze so you can get infinite of these bullets, because trying to get the actual wind charges is a slow process with the half-hour cooldown to being able to refight these trial spawners. And there's only around 3 of the breeze trial spawners per trial chamber structure. So getting these wind charges as an item in large amount is going to be quite time consuming. Just like the breeze's wind charges, when it hits a entity directly, it does do damage to them, but only a small amount. Now another cool thing about these is that you won't actually take fall damage from the extra height that these will give you, unless you happen to fall lower than where you first initially collided with the wind charge. So if you get hit by wind charge right here and then went up in the air and then fell back down to here, it's not going to calculate all that extra falling back down to this height. But if you got hit by wind charge here and then fell lower than it, then it's going to calculate the damage from below the wind charge all the way to the new location where you hit the ground. So when doing a wind charge double jump on a flat surface, you're not going to take any damage. Now I could definitely see this being used in mini games, so you can get some like cool parkour going on, as well as the PvP aspect to this. They can knock back your opponent, which is different than like snowballs. And snowballs actually don't perform knockback to players, neither does eggs, although they do work on other mobs. This is a common misconception that snowballs or eggs will knock back players, as this is only a thing that occurs in mods. So now we can actually do this in vanilla. And because this item is helpful for like a tool and utility, it's here in the utility tab and create a menu, as well as also being a combat thing. You can find it down here with the snowballs and eggs. It's always really appreciated when they come out with like a single item that can have multiple use, not only for people that do like map making and parkour, but also people that can do PvP. This is what they try to do with every update, make something that can kind of fit in each of the different categories. Like in the redstone category, we got the crafter, but we could also use a wind charge and redstone related things. And just like the breeze's wind charge, you can use them to flip like levers, buttons, and trapdoors. Also, blocks that aren't impacted by the actual explosion of the wind charge have a special tag called Blocks Wind Charge Explosion. Let me know what ideas you guys want me to test with this new wind charge item. YouTube failed to send out my last video to most of you. It's just full of interesting and helpful stuff that you'll need to know now and in the future. So if you could do me a big favor and check it out, or at least click the watch later button on that video. While searching for these trial chambers, I found something quite cool. This trial chamber actually goes down into the bedrock layer. At first it seems like, okay, the structure itself isn't really breaking the bedrock, it's just replacing any stone and leaving the bedrock behind. But then if you come over here, this structure is clearly replacing the bedrock. Look at this, guys. Nice clean bedrock. And if you go ahead and actually break this, it's completely void underneath. Looks like these staircases are supposed to go a bit lower and go underneath up here, and then get you into this room over here somehow. And this is actually one of the fighting rooms. You can see this trial spawner is way down here, just above the void. And just like the other piece, some parts are not replacing bedrock, but some pieces are. You can see around the edges, we got all this cleaned out, and it looks just completely strange. Now from underneath, if we take a look at this, I don't see any spot that actually completely breaks through the bedrock. So the closest you can get is one layer above it. But technically this is another bedrock breaking method. And if you want to check out the other dozens of bedrock breaking methods that I've discovered over the last 14 years, I have an entire playlist, and I'll put that up in the right hand corner or in the description. The vault block also got a retexture to make it look different from the trial spawners. You can see it now has the gray part on top as well, when it was only mostly underneath. You can definitely tell them apart now, so that you have no problem finding it to get your trial keys used on it. You can see it even opens up a bit differently and drops out the items. How do you like the new look for the vault? Despite the vault block having its own noise when walked on top of it, it was still using the default noise. Listen to this. Now we'll have the unique noise of the vault. Armadillos got a new animation, so now when they get scared, they roll into a complete ball with the head not showing up at all. But after a little while, you can see they will stick the head up, check to see if the coast is clear, and then they will continue to unroll. This is kind of the best of both worlds, as people were complaining that because some armadillos in real life do a really good job at actually hiding their head, so now they will do the same. But then also will stick their head out so they have kind of a cute little look, just as before, but only for a short period. I think this is a really cool animation where the armadillo can kind of peek out, and then if it gets re-scared, it can always roll back in again. And they let us know with this last change, the armadillos are complete, and they're going to now focus on working on the looks of the wolf armor. What do you think of this new armadillo animation? Now, armadillos dropping scutes was kind of like how chickens would drop eggs. They would just do this so often based on a timer. But there was a problem with the armadillo dropping scutes, as the timer would reset every time you would reload the world. So now the armadillo should just continue counting down and eventually give you a scute. Speaking of armadillos, when you give an armadillo no AI, it doesn't move around, it shouldn't do anything, except it was still rolling in a ball when it got attacked, which it shouldn't do. And then unlike other armadillos, which would unroll after a short period, it would be stuck in this rolled up ball. So you won't have to worry about that anymore. Now when it came to baby armadillos, when feeding them sputter eyes, they weren't making the eating noise as if they're eating it, compared to the adults, which you definitely can hear. So they added that noise in. When it comes to your tamed wolf, they now double the health of them. So before they would have 10 hearts, or known as 20 health points, they now have 20 hearts or 40 health points. And this is actually double the amount that players actually have. But to balance the change out, dogs will no longer take half the damage from most environmental sources as they were before. So you won't really notice this change, other than if you would accidentally hit your dog. Since it comes from the player, it can take more accidental hits. Also, when it comes to feeding the dog, every food will do twice as much healing. This will make them much more likely to survive close encounter fights, especially if you would add the dog armor to it. I'm glad they're making dogs a little bit stronger, because otherwise it just wasn't worth even carrying these things around because they just die too quickly. What do you think of these changes? Now you know how snow golems can hit some of their snowballs and it can make it look like they're taking damage, but the mobs normally don't actually take damage. Except the problem was when it came to tame wolves, it was. So we don't have to worry about our dogs ever dying when there's a fight going on with some snow golems and other hostile mobs. Now if you use commands to change the dog's NBT data, such as like changing its collar, or its owner, this would also for some reason reset its health to be fully healed. So now it will only change the thing you want to change when it comes to your tame dog. When right-clicking on some items in air, such as like horse armor, dog armor, it would just cause these items to go invisible in your inventory, just like ghost items. So now they won't vanish. Now in the past you could give yourself some really high amplifiers, such as giving you a jump boost that's above 127, which would have some really weird effects. And same thing for like levitation and mining fatigue. So now they're restricted between level 0, which will actually get you jump boost strength number 1, all the way up to 255. Now because this change removed the fun of like having gravity, they actually added in a new attribute called generic gravity, which controls the blocks per tick squared acceleration downwards. So currently the gravity is just 0.08. Let's go ahead and make this stronger by setting it to 2. Oh man, it's like jumping on a honey block. You cannot hardly jump at all. Now let's make the gravity even weaker yet, 0.01. Woo! It's like being on the moon. Kind of like the Minecraft April Fool's moon. Now this is really cool. I could definitely see people doing some kind of fun let's plays where they give themselves a lot of gravity or very low gravity. They also came in with the safe fall distance, which is normally just 3 blocks. So if we fall further than 3 blocks, we'll take damage. So if we set this to just 1 block, we take damage every time we jump. And of course you can set it to a really large amount, and even if you fall that far, you don't take fall damage. There's also a fall damage multiplier, which will multiply the overall fall damage. So it's currently just 1, so you don't really get excessive amount of damage taken. So you can make every fall damage take like twice as much damage or 10 times as much damage. As well as the generic jump strength that got added to all entities. And this controls the base impulse from a jump, before calculating stuff like jump boost or any type of modifier on the block. And since they changed the mining fatigue one, they also came in with one called block break speed, which is normally just 1. So if I make it 10 times as fast, you can see it can actually break blocks 10 times faster than it normally can. And if you want, you can also set this the opposite so that it's really difficult to break blocks. They also changed how block positions are being stored in the game, as they're now being stored as an array of 3 integers, being the X, Y, and Z, rather than a map. Now you're probably aware that any type of container that is placed over a hopper will prevent this hopper from actually picking up individual items that are above it, but instead will only try to pull items from the actual container. So something like a brewing stand, which has this little ledge here, even though the item is directly above the hopper, it can't pick it up because it's just concentrating on what's inside the brewing stand. And you could reduce lag by putting composters above hoppers if you're not using this pulling of items from above. But there was a problem if you would happen to get an item that was down in the bowl shape of it. Even though there was a container above it, when the locker would unlock, it could actually pick up that item. Now you might think that this wouldn't occur because items can't really fall into there, and even items on top wouldn't get pulled in, only if they're down inside. But sometimes an item can get glitched in there if it gets like pushed into a wall. So if we watch this item get teleported into the bowl shape of it, all of a sudden it could end up inside of it. And this was actually a problem when it came to my simple gold farm. If any of you guys ever built it, you might notice once in a while you get a gold sword to fall into the storage system, despite the storage system having item filters which prevent anything but the gold nuggets from getting through. And this was occurring because the pigmen would die while slightly down inside of the hopper, so the items could end up in the hopper below it. This often could occur with shulkers when they get squished and there's hoppers nearby. The item could get glitched and pushed into the lower part of the hopper. So they tried to implement a fix for this in the latest snapshot. The only problem is, the way they implemented the fix is the hoppers will no longer pick up items above it if there is a full block on top of the hopper. So this glass would prevent the hopper from picking up items, let's say, that are just slightly below where I'm currently standing. But it hasn't fixed the problem where it can still pick up items that are just inside of the hopper and not technically above the hopper. Even if I would switch out the glass for a barrel, which is a tile entity, we can see the item is right there, and then if we unlock it, it ends up inside. So the fix doesn't fully work, but let's see if it partially works. We'll teleport it halfway down into the glass, and you can see it doesn't actually get picked up by the hopper. Instead, it just kind of clips through and ends up at the top of it. But if I would switch the glass out for honey, then all of a sudden it can pull it, because honey is not a full block, even though it appears to be a full block. So hopefully they do the entire fix where items that are down inside the hopper also don't get picked up. But they said that this change here to hoppers will improve performance, as rather than having to put something like compost on the top of your hoppers, you can just place some glass or any block, even like cobblestone. So it will break any contraption that tries to shove an entity inside of a full cube like this, but entity containers can still be emptied from hoppers. Please tell me what you think about this and what solution you think they should use. When it comes to different terms that Minecraft uses, it removes a bunch of capitalizations and change them out for lower cases, and then put in underscores instead of having no spaces. When it comes to coding, this is something that really drives me nuts when there's capitalizations in the middle of a word, but I'm also not really a fan of having spaces or underscores. What's your preference on this? For technical changes, reduce the amount of data that's being sent from the server during login, and added in a Java flight recorder for the individual chunk reading as well as writing. Now when having a gas that's invulnerable, you can't actually hurt it because it's invulnerable, but you could actually kill it just by redirecting its fireball at it, which was not intended, so you can no longer do that. Now when it comes to the locate command, you can use this hashtag to find structures that are specific to where cats spawn as being black. This would be the witch hut, but this hashtag wasn't working when it came to the biomes. All of a sudden it was missing, and it wasn't auto-completing like it should have been, so you could find specific biomes that are in certain types of groups, like ones that cool mobs can spawn in. So that was fixed in today's snapshot. You also make sure that water-related music would now play when you're in that area. Macros that are too long will now tell you why they failed, with the maximum command length in a function being 2 million characters. Japanese language will no longer use Chinese font. And the Japanese font got a bunch of changes. Now stop by and say hello to me over at my Twitch livestream and join us as we play around with these new features. Don't forget to check out that recent video that YouTube forgot to send out to a lot of you, and much appreciation to all my supporters on screen. I'll see you guys all over there, bye bye!